The finale. It's here. It's the finale. The finale of this book. Hello everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy and welcome to the finale of this book. Today is a short read with 11 pages and 11 pages of this book, and then we of course send the original or the full send of this book, and then we start a new book, which I'm gonna have either be Holes or Scythe or whatever, because I don't want to read another Minecraft or FNAF book. I want to read a book that's more realistic and more out there. Yep. Alright, well, let's start from where we left off with today's chapter. This wasn't the desk of some low-level paper pusher. This was the desk of someone in power, in this case, legal power. Arthur had in the front desk of Carolyn Brandon Graves, Hercules Hospital head attorney. Mr. Graves had been nicer chairs than Pete and all the others in the administration office. Arthur was quite comfortable with the burgundy leather wingback chair. You understand, Father Blythe, that any damages resulting from the patient transport, be they property or personal, shall be wholly and completely in your responsibility? Arthur nodded. I understand. His stomach did a somersault. What if something went wrong? Arthur adjusted his attitude. Where was his faith? He was a man in room 1280 would be watched over. The attorney pushed the stack of papers across the clean polished surface of the mahogany desk. Please read through these agreements, sign where indicated, and initial where specified. Arthur started to lean forward. Not here, Miss Father Blythe, Miss Graves said. She made a motion, and a thin, well-dressed woman appeared and picked up the papers. Please go with Miss Weber here. She will take you to the place where you can read and sign. I'm afraid I have another appointment. Arthur dutifully vacated the wingback chair, feeling victorious. Mia hovered in the hallway outside of the hospital's legal offices. She had been told Father Blythe was still signing papers, giving them to the authority to take a man in room 1280 to Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center. In spite of those papers, she hoped that he'd be able to talk them into giving up the idea. Leaning against the wall, Mia nodded and smiled at everyone who went by, but she didn't really see anyone. Her mind wasn't in this hallway with her. She was reviewing what had led her to this place and the time in this mission. Mia hadn't really understood why the only job she could find was a hospice wing in the Hercules Hospital. She was highly qualified and had experience references. She should have been able to get a better position, in fact. She'd been feeling pretty resentful with being stuck with that, and she'd gotten. If it wasn't for her boyfriend continually reminding her that the job was a stepping stone, she'd have been taken pretty miserable. But between his encouragement, his wonderful sandwiches, and her own naturally optimistic nature, she'd been reasonably content here. Except for being creeped out by her fellow nurses in the hospice wing and her disturbing hushed conversations. But now, she understood them. Oh boy, did she ever. Mia had also understood why she had gotten this job. She was needed here. Why, hello, Mia. Mia focused and realized Father Blythe was standing in front of her. What are you doing here? Mia smiled and watched Father Blythe juggle a stack of papers, orange rain gear, and bright red bicycle helmet. The rain gear dripped on Father Blythe's black leather shoes for some reason. She always smelled like coconuts. Actually, I'm here to talk to you, Father, Mia said. She glanced around the busy hallway and then looked down in the hallway in the waiting area. Could you come with me for a second? Father Blythe glanced at his watch. Peggy's going to be meeting me out in the front of the church van. It's wheelchairs accessible. I'm going to trade her Ruby for the van. Then he looked into Mia's eyes. But, okay. Mia looked Father Blythe's arm and led him down the hall. She smiled at everyone as they went, noticing several nurses gave Father Blythe disapproving frowns. In the waiting area, Mia sat down in one of the tan plush chairs and motioned to one next to it. Father Blythe sat beside her. What is it, Mia? You seem troubled. I am. She looked at Father Blythe's warm brown eyes. He had such a kind face, such an open face. She should see that he'd known suffering, but she could also tell that he was resolute in the intention to see the good in everything. He had one of those mouths that curved upward. Even when his face was expressionless, he was designed for seeing light and darkness. Realizing that he was waiting for her to speak, Mia looked around and see she was there alone. She leaned as close to Father Blythe as she could without getting weird, and hailed in a rush. Father, I know I gave you the advance and the permission to take the man in room 1280 out of the hospital. But you can't take him. You just can't. The man in room 1280, he can't leave this place. I can't explain why I know this, but I know it. He can't go where he wants to go. You can't take him. The other nurses are right. I thought they were lunatics. I admit. I did. But now I understand. They're right. There's something in that poor man. Something in there that you can't take where he wants to go. You can't. It'll be devastating, even catastrophic if you do. I don't know why or how, but I know it. You have to believe me. Mia stopped. She realized that he was going to gush forth another 1,000 or even million words, and Father Blythe wasn't going to change his mind. It was right there on his face. Lips pressed in a compassionate regret, thick gray brows drawn together, crinkles drawn in the corner of his white set eyes, slightly weak chin tucked. These were all the telegraphing that something come out of Father Blythe's mouth. Mia, he said when he finished her case, I'm so sorry, but I have to take this man where he wants to go. It's his last request. Just because this is his last request doesn't make it a good one, Mia attempted fleetly. Why is this important to you? Father Blythe asked. Mia had no logical answer. She wasn't about to explain what she'd seen in the hospital room. She knew how crazy it sounded. She couldn't lose this job, but beyond what she'd seen, all she had was feeling, an intuition. Maybe it was a premonition. It just is, she said finally. Father Blythe sat down in rain gear and bicycle helmet. He tucked his paper under his arm and took Mia's hand. Mia, I've lived long enough to see all kind of evil that exists in our world. I haven't seen it all by any means, but I've seen more than enough to understand that my glass is always full attitude is no basis in earthly reality. I would be jaded by now, I suppose. I should be pessimistic, ready to see the worst, but I'm not. I'm not because I chose to let the past color the way to see the present. I choose to expect in every moment to find what's good. But what if you don't? Then there's always the next moment. And if there isn't, Mia could hear the fear in her voice. She brushed away the tears that threatened to spill. Father Blythe breathed in and out slowly. Then I'll move on to whatever my journey holds next for me, I suppose. That's all we can do. That's all I'm trying to do for the man in room 1280. Mia swallowed and nodded. You wouldn't change your mind? I'm sorry, but no. Mia stood to Father Blythe gather his things. May I hug you, Father? She asked. Of course. They hugged and tried to pour into Father Blythe, but expected a huge amount of warmth she felt for him. Or was it worry? They separated and he said, Bye, Mia. I'll see you again soon. Bye, Father, she said as she gave her a little wave and headed down the hall. Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center was a massive collection of reddish and whitish buildings that Arthur couldn't believe he had never noticed before, looking like long flat metal-sided blocks haphazardly placed in the clusters of a gargantuan child. The buildings just had been there at least 20 years, slow, hung, and dotted with narrow windows. Every one of them needed paint, or at least a good cleaning. Arthur was pretty sure the buildings had been bright white and bright red when they first been built. Along the sides of the building, slanted drivers led to the cracked concrete loading docks. Even the big rig trailers, tucked into at least a dozen of those docks, it looked like they had been in service for a good long while. Some were rusted, many were dented, all were dirty. Admittedly, there was a dreary day, but Arthur was sure even in the bright sunlight this distribution center would look like it needed a lot of TLC. The address of the distribution center which Peggy had gotten to Arthur along with the instructions for getting there turned out to be the building, but rather than a small empty guardhouse and an open gate. Once through the abandoned entry, Arthur didn't know exactly what to do. He realized that the man at the destination of the Fazbear Center was most likely picking Iowa as the place he wanted to visit. What specific part of the place did he want to go? Arthur glanced in the rearview mirror of the sheet-enshrouded bundle of the wheelchair, locked into place behind the van's passenger seat. He still wasn't used to seeing the palpitating dry organs and veins of the upright position. He also wasn't used to the smell. Although he did try to talk himself out of it, the trip from Hercules Hospital to Fazbear Entertainment, Arthur was sure the man smelled worse with every mile they traveled. The van was filled with the grim stench of sulfur, feces, decomposition, blood, and bile. Ever since the man in room 1280 had been transferred from his bed to the wheelchair, he had been leaking blood and vicious black fluids. The dreary mixtures were now soaking in the sheet around the man and pooling on the van floor. Arthur knew it was going to take hours to clean up this van after the trip. In spite of this, the man sat upright on the seat. He was strapped in, but his head was drooping. Of course, he had no eyes, but his eye sockets were directed ahead, as if he had to see exactly where they were. Feeling less and less sure about what he was doing, Arthur told himself to stop judging the poor man based on his appearance. He cleared his throat. So, do you know where you want to go? Arthur didn't really expect a response, but he got one. The man raised one of his crusty finger bones and pointed in the direction that seemed to indicate the largest building in the Fazbear collection. It was also the building Arthur noticed that a large covered courtyard leading to the grass-fronted wall. That was probably the main entrance. Arthur realized he would have called ahead to get the permission of the man at the distribution center, but maybe his failure to do so had been unconscious. What was the old saying? It was better to ask for forgiveness than for permission? Something like that. Arthur didn't want another battle like the one he had to fight in the hospital. To that end, Arthur decided not to head to the main entrance the man had indicated. I'm going to find a side entrance, I think, Arthur said out loud. Something more private. Are you alright with that? The man didn't move, but Arthur thought he could hear sloppy percussion emanating from the man's chest. With Arthur hearing the man's heartbeat, Arthur suppressed the shivers that started atop his head and did a pego down the neck to his spine. Arthur did the van in gear and pulled it around to the side of the main building. The man's tires made fizzing around the wet pavement. Arthur wondered how he transported the man into the building without getting him wet. Somehow dousing a body barely in skin didn't seem like a good idea. As soon as Arthur turned the corner of the big building, he saw a solution to his problem. The side of the building had van-sized loading docks under the overhang. "Ask and ye shall receive," Arthur said, smiling, and said a prayer to thanks for help. At the far end of the row of the loading docks, a couple of husky warriors wearing black braces and scowls loaded with boxes in the dirty white van. They had paid no attention when Arthur pulled the church van parallel to the platform opposite the end of the docks. "This should work," he said to the man. Of course, he got no response. Jumping out of the van, Arthur took the cleansing lungful of fresh air. No, not French, actually. The air smelled like grease and solvents, but at least it smelled better than the air in the van. Arthur opened the side door, moved the wheelchair, and jock-eyed into the position of the ramp. Trying not to be too prissy about it, Arthur touched the blood-stained sheet and adjusted to better to cover the man. He had nothing to wipe his fingers on, but he ignored the issue and wheeled the man into the building. Inside the roll-up door openings of the loading docks, the building revealed itself to be a heart of fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center. It was stretching so far into the distance that Arthur couldn't see the end of it. Floor-to-ceiling shelves with stacks and stacks of boxes and plastics and closed packages. Peggy had told Arthur that Fazbear Entertainment created parts and costumes for animatronics used in restaurants and other venues. It also created costumes for humans to wear, various toys and other merchandise related from the most famous characters. Arthur assumed that this was all in the boxes and packages. It also explained the faded murals of the pale yellow walls. The murals depicted a variety of outlandish animal characters of questionable purpose, despite their cheery appearance. Arthur couldn't be sure if they were intended to be friendly. In front of the shelving area, a series of conveyors took boxes and packages and journeyed through the building. Journeys that would probably end up near loading docks. A few workers monitored the conveyors, while the others drove forklifts down the rows in the shelving area. A tall man with red hair wandered about, carrying a clipboard, but he wasn't looking this way. The building was surprisingly quiet. Only the muted clatter of the conveyor, the hum of the forklift worker motors, and a few shouts and thumps broke up the cavernous hush of the place. "Well, here we are." Arthur turned to look at the man, and then the man started to convulse. Several thoughts tingled in Arthur's head as he watched the bones and organs and tissue in the wheelchair shake uncontrollably, that some of the man's rib bones cracked. When blood flew, the tissue genders began spewing. Arthur thought, "They would have let me bring a nurse, and what should I do? And why did I sign all those papers? And please guide me." Arthur leaned over the wheelchair just as the man collapsed under the mound of bone and an indescribable mass of fried human parts. At a loss, Arthur began to pray silently. Before Arthur could get enough 2 words prayer, the man's remains heaved, and they burst like nightmarish egg blowing in a disgorge of new life. Expelling rank-smelling, sticky black blood and the tar-like substance of frightful spray all over the Arthur and the building's smooth concrete floor, the explosion of bone and veins and organs happened in an instant. In an instant, Arthur saw a void that remains gaping like a portal to hell itself. Then he, frantically wiping nauseating fluids and slimy body bits off his face. As he did this, he saw the man's body tumble in the wheelchair, and Arthur knew the man was dead. Instinctively, Arthur began praying again, but as he prayed, he heard something that wiped even the thought of prayer out of his mind. He heard a rush of pattering footsteps, little sprightly footsteps capering away toward the shelving area of the building. What was that? Arthur wiped his eyes again and looked around. At first, he saw the man's remains. For the first time since Arthur had gathered the courage to look at the man, all exposed the insides are still. Then Arthur's gaze landed on a trail of tiny footprints that were tamped in the man's charred blood and fluids. He followed the trail and saw the footprints continued from a man, etching the floor of the man's blood like fearful hieroglyphs marking the way. The way to where? The man had moved on, but something hadn't. "Father, is everything okay?" A man's voice pitched in high shock asked Arthur. Arthur turned. The speaker was a red-headed man with a clipboard. He stared at the floor, his eyes blanched and his eyes wide. "Actually, no. I think everything's okay," Arthur said. For the first time in his life, he was sure of it. Ooh, spooky! So it sounds like maybe Arthur was taken over? Spooky. He always did say he always comes back. So I would assume that the man in that hospital room would be like William Afton or something. I don't know. But it's spooky all the same. Anyways, that's the end of that. And yeah. Hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. If you like Be Fishing, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time for another book about, I don't know. It's probably something cool, though. Bye-bye.